Welcome to the Private Lender Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey guys, Chris and Jason here at the Private Lenders Podcast. Thanks for checking out the show. Today we're going to be talking about how we closed 175 loans in 22. It's right here near the end of 2022. Before we dive into that, real quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, go check out hardmoneymastermind.com. You can create a free account, join the conversation with us and other private lenders from around the country, and we hope to see you in there. Okay. So it's been an interesting year. We basically had two different markets happen in the same year, and it's changing as we speak. And I think that the lead sources and where the actual closed deals came from is going to be interesting to you. So backing up real quick, just talking about the first half of 22 was still a hot residential real estate market. Interest rates were still low at the time, both mortgage rates and short-term rates. And there was a ton of competition out there. There was a ton of capital. Deals were moving quickly. We had to compete for them. People were cutting prices, which we don't like to do. So we were doing the same thing in the first half of 22 that we have been doing for the past like 5, 6, 7 years, right? Competing against the same type of market. And then it changed. And there's pros and cons to the change. So one of the pros is that a lot of our competition went away with rising interest rates, the residential market starting to take a dip, and some of those capital sources either really tightening up underwriting guidelines or just backing out entirely. So it started to change, right around halfway point of the year, probably around June. And internally, we were having underwriting conversations about how we were going to prepare for a down market and the changes that we were making and the tightening up that we were doing then. And it's been interesting in the second 6 months of the year because we are seeing fewer deals, fewer looks. I think a lot of less professional real estate investors aren't heavy into the market right now, but with the lack of competition and the lack of capital out there, we're seeing good quality deals from good real estate investors.
Yeah. And I think that's good knowledge to discuss kind of going into 2023. And I think internally we have kind of mixed feelings and mixed reviews of the market. In one side, we're very excited about it. Who doesn't want to be involved in a business where, you only have to talk to a few borrowers that will turn into really, really good deals, potentially do better deals, make more money on your loans, in essence, have to do less loans to do so. But on the other side, you kind of have mixed emotional feelings because you're used to, talking to hundreds or thousands of borrowers on a monthly basis in order to find the best of the best of the best of the best. Right. And that's what we're used to. And that's kind of all we know. That's what we've done from the beginning. And, we do some private consulting where folks, and that's typically what we build out for them as well, is you got to get lots and lots and lots of looks, lots of opportunities. That's a good thing. But ultimately, who wants to go through 1,000 or 100 deals to get one when you go through 10 deals to get one, as long as the quality is the same? That's the important part. And, so it's kind of a funky feeling right now, but then at the other end, it's a good feeling because hey, we put in a lot of heavy lifting in order to get the best of the deals out there. And, we're going to go through here in a second where all of our leads came from, but the majority of them came from past clients. And that kind of just goes to show that, hey, we all want to work with past clients. That's important. That, in essence, you can work less, do less volume, have less overhead and potentially still make more money on these deals with a lot less headache. So I think going into 2023, anyone who has access to private capital, I mean, real private capital, not, institutional money, like private capital that you control your own money or other capital investors, just going to have such a big upper hand. I believe that a lot of these other capital sources are really going to be struggling, and it's going to continue to be hard to do deals on a consistent basis with that type of capital. So, if you haven't gone out and raised capital yet, there's no better time than to do it now, because there's going to be a lot of good looks and a lot of opportunities coming up soon.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like we're cautiously optimistic. We're being careful of the market and the resales and everything else, but we are, hopeful about the good opportunities that we're seeing every day. So before we get into all the closed deals and where they came from, zooming out a little bit to let you know about how we run marketing for HMB. And mind you, we're 15 years in. This has certainly evolved over time. We've gotten much better at marketers. We've gotten more focused at times. We've gotten a little broad at times. So I know that there are private lenders out there who have 10 or 12 guys that they lend to, and that's really all they need. And they don't see marketing as part of the game plan. And if you're in that spot, then great. Deploying X amount of million to a handful of people who and work with all the time sounds great. If you're in that spot, awesome. We do it a bit different. Like we put the marketing out wide because we need a lot of deal flow to turn into the right closed loan. So since the beginning, I mean, going back forever, we've been heavy online in terms of our own organic search results on the website, our email list growing over time, paid traffic as well. And then we've also been very present offline in RIAs and meetup groups. And a handful of years ago, we started our own meetup group, and just we're pretty well known in the Mid-Atlantic area where we lend. Our name stands out. We've been around for a while. Not that everyone uses us, and that's fine, but we put out a very wide net, and that's the way we like it. And that's the way that we've kept consistency in our loan volume, very consistent, to be honest. It's kind of wild, actually, how consistent our loan production has been year over year, even with adjusting markets.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And here's the other thing to think about. Like, I understand if you have the same group of borrowers that you work with all the time, and I think that's important. Just be a little bit cautious that if one of them disappears, or if the house of cards falls and one of them defaults, if a borrower starts, if you see early signs of a borrower defaulting, be careful, especially when you have a lot of your eggs in one basket. I know a private lender here locally that has about 75 to 90 loans outstanding at any given time. And it's a decent amount, maybe 20 million or so. And a third of them is with one borrower. And he got in, and again, they performed, but he put himself in a position that it's twofold. Number one, he has to continue to lend to this guy, or he has to let employees go, and he has to reduce volume to kind of unwind and replace him with a lot of other folks, right? So that's a hard, uncomfortable thing to do, and I understand that. He's gonna have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward, or if that guy starts defaulting, he could wipe out a third of the guy's portfolio. So that makes me nervous. And there's borrowers that we have, whatever, maybe a few $1 million max deployed with for a few deals, and they've reached out to us for more deals. And we're like, you know what? I think we're comfortable where we're at right now. Let's get some loans paid off, cycled through, and then we'll do some more. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think a lot of lenders are scared to do that sometimes because they don't want to, they want to take care of their borrower. And I agree with that. But at the same time, you want to be safe. Just like we don't take on capital from, too much capital from one individual investor. We try not to have too much exposure with one individual borrower, just so it doesn't change the business if something, drastic happens. So it's something to think about. Going into the way that some of these leads, closed loans, where they came from, our numbers are going to be skewed compared to everybody else's, mostly because we've been in business for a long time. But I think it's something to kind of use as a benchmark. But, the goal of this business is to get repeat borrowers, past clients, to do deals with you over and over and over and over. And the longer you've been in this business, the more that's going to be the case. Like, for instance, my current portfolio that I run internally is the majority past clients, right? And our partners in other markets, the ones that have been established for a long time, the majority of theirs is past clients. The newer partners of ours are less past clients, just because they don't have time. They don't have, it just hasn't grown, I should say, to that. So 80 of the loan, or 79 of the loans that we've done this past year as a group collectively were past clients. Typically, and we don't know the exact data on this, but typically two deals, every two deals you do, one will turn into a repeat borrower. And that's how the volume grows. I remember the last office that in New Jersey that we've been in the process of ramping up. I think we're 3 years in now. I remember 3 years ago, we were doing whatever, 2 deals, 3 deals a month, but they're all new borrowers. And it was frustrating for them because he had a hard time seeing the scale. And I was like, just wait. I was like, you do 2, 3, 4 deals a month. And guess what? In 6 months from now, those borrowers are going to come back and do another deal from them, right? So you're going to consistently do your few deals a month, but then you get layered on your repeat business. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, it's true. And it does take time to get there, So I think a good mix of new people and repeat people is right. Because look, if you had, call it 10 borrowers and they each have the same amount of loans and you're equally spread, 10% for each borrower, like I think that's okay. If you're way too heavy, a third of the portfolio with one individual, like the example that you gave before, I mean, that's not great, So we've tried to maintain that good mix, but at the same time, you can't rely on the same real estate investors to be around forever because some of them drop out of the business. They might end up getting in a hairy spot and defaulting on something. They could take on their own private capital and not use lenders like us anymore. Like all kinds of stuff could happen. So you constantly want to be bringing in new quality borrowers into the fold that turn into the new good repeat people, right? Like we're not necessarily lending to the same people that we did in 2012. I mean, there's probably a few of them around, but that the repeat people have become new repeat people. And that's what all the marketing is for. Do you want to give some of the other breakdown of some of the other channels to turn into closed deals?
Yeah, sure. And also like everyone's probably heard the story before. We've one of our biggest borrowers that we worked with in the past, we did over 100 loans for him over time, not per year, but we did over 100 loans for him. We haven't done a loan for him in 5 years or 6 years because institutional capital came by. He went that way. He wanted higher leverage than we're comfortable lending at this point. He'll always find somebody to lend him money at what he wants. He's a good operator and he's got good deals, but it just wasn't a good a fit for us. So you got to adjust based on your comfort level. Also, this particular year, unit wise, it wasn't our highest year ever. It was a good year, no doubt, but like our years are consistent. That's important to us. And our business and our operation doesn't change. If we do 20% less volume, 20% more volume, like we're in the kind of the spot of that we're comfortable with. Would we like to try to do more deals? Yeah, absolutely. Our average loan amount was about $226,000. So we did just over 40 million in production. And keep in mind, there's still we still have more business days left in the month to do we have some deals that are closing. But point being, like, that's our comfort level. Do we want to do more? We would do more. Our philosophy is we'll do every deal that fits our mold. Every good deal that we can, that works for us, we'll do. Ideally, if it's $5-10 million more, sure, absolutely. But point being is, we're also going into an unknown time right now. And like we talked about, we're getting less deals, higher quality. And if we can find more good ones that fit that mold, we're going to absolutely do it. But again, we might have quoted a really good borrower $250,000 on a deal 4 months ago. Same deal came around, we might have only quoted them $230,000, right? Because we wanted to be a little bit more cautious. So all things to take in consideration. You never want to just push through deals just to do them. So 37 of our loans came from broker business. The interesting fact about that is the majority of those were over the last quarter or so as the market changed, as the institutional capital backed out or softened, I should say. A lot of these brokers didn't have homes for some of their good business and they came to us. Typically what happens when a broker sends us a deal is, hey, and this happens all the time. So be aware of it and understand it and don't feel bad about it. They'll be like, hey, Jason, I used to use so-and-so. They used to give me 90% leverage on these deals. My borrower's got great credit. He's ready to close whenever. They told me they could give him 260 blah, 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 at this rate, can you match it? And we'll do it. And it's like, well, I don't really need to match it. We're not matching anything. That capital source isn't available anymore. Like, we're happy to do it, but like we're going to be like a 230 loan instead of a 260 loan. And instead of 1099, we're going to be 1299 or whatever the case is. So just because, there's a good deal that you're kind of salivating over, you got to stick to your guns and stick to your terms. And, brokers a lot of time will do what they can to try to, get you to do it the way that they had done it in the past with other capital sources, and just do it and lend the way you feel is right. 14 loans came from referral partners. So like real estate agents or other real estate investors that just referred deals from, people that we could help out. One deal came from a meetup group. Five deals. Well, let's talk about, let's see, 5, 6. So five deals we have jotted down as our website. Some of the stats are kind of hard to determine. That's just how they're labeled in our CRM. 5 from our website, 4 from Google, 3 from Facebook, 8 from inbound phone calls, 10 from inbound emails, and 12 were unknown. Now, keep in mind, like, we try to track these things as best as possible. So like an inbound phone call could be like somebody called in, got their information, looked in our CRM, and we didn't have data on them. Or they sent a direct email, and we looked in our CRM and we didn't have any data on them. So that was the first time they originated. So again, for instance, like, just because we got one email that's documented from a meetup group doesn't mean that meetup groups and RIAs are some of the best sources to get deals. They by far were some of the best back in the day, and they still are today. It just happens that there was only one new one that came from a meetup. That doesn't mean that, half of the past client deals that are tagged as past clients today didn't originally originate from a meetup group years ago. This is as of the most recent, source where the lead came from. So that's the challenging part from it. And that's what you got to kind of.
Yeah. Well, once you're in business for a while, like that always has been challenging for us, because somebody could be in our orbit somewhere in 3 or 5 different ways. Like, for example, they follow us on Facebook, and they've also been in our email database since 2017. But then they clicked on an ad and came through Google ads because it happened to search something. And like, okay, so like, where do you attribute that to? It's hard, and it's never perfect in an offline business like this. It's not like we're a straight website where people can only find us online and only convert into a sale online. That stuff's easy to track. When people can contact you in all these different ways, like web application, email, pick up the phone, hit you up on Instagram, like, it's really hard to track that original source of it. And that's okay. We do our best, and we get a good handle on where these folks are coming from. But it's really never going to be perfect across the board anyway, at scale. And that's all right. No big deal. Right. So I think that moving into the first quarter of 23, our plan is really just more of the same. We are trying to keep our marketing consistent like it always is, tweak certain channels, maybe cut some ad spend if it's not converting as well, tweak however we see fit, and try to scoop up all of the best deals in the market that we can. And we think there are going to be a lot. And at the same time, be very careful with the outstanding portfolio, how everyone's performing, how resales are going. And I think that it's going to be, all in all, maybe a little dicey at times with home values, but for the most part, I think it's going to be a very solid year for private lenders who truly control their own capital. So,
yeah, and all else fails, and you can't wrap your brain around how much to lend the borrower, just go lower. Just go lower, right? Don't try to, don't push it. Don't push it.
Don't push it too much to try to make a deal work. Like, you gotta quote what is safe, and in essence, they can take it or leave it. And that's just the situation that we're always in. And I think that a lot more people are going to be taking it than leaving it, which is what we've seen. Good spot to be in as a private lender. So yeah, thanks for checking out the podcast. If you haven't done so already, go create a free account at hardmoneymastermind.com. Join the conversation with us and all the other private lenders, and we will see you next time on the Private Lenders Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show
are only opinions and not legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you'd enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.